Hey everybody, welcome to the Lot 1 podcast. My name is Deji.
And I'm Chris.
Today we're talking to Tony Rosenthal, who is the Senior Vice President of Docs at Kennedy Marshall. Today we're going to be talking about Little Dicky, networking and moving up within freelancing, pitching docs, the process of documentary development, and the Bee Gees, Beach Boys, and much, much more. So let's get into the show. All right, so today on the podcast, we have Tony Rosenthal. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
So for those people who don't know who you are, do you mind giving us a backstory?
Yeah, so most of the world doesn't know who I am. I am Tony Rosenthal, like you said. I am a film producer. I work for the Kennedy Marshall Company in the documentary department as the senior vice president of the department, which is a fancy way of saying I pretty much do everything that falls through whatever or after whatever the president assigns to me, essentially.
Yeah.
I kind of do a little bit of everything, some things better than others. And I'm constantly learning, as I'm in this role because I didn't go to school for any of this. I just kind of fell into filmmaking. So that's the long short of it.
Nice. So I kind of want to go back to, I guess, the beginning of your filmmaking journey, because you started out in a very different role than you have now. But do you mind kind of talking about how you got started in film?
I, growing up, was always interested in movies and television, probably more so than a lot of my friends with the television side of things, and would make really embarrassing videos that I hope never surface or see the light of day with my friends in the neighborhood. And, growing up, my focus was on music. I was a vocalist. I went to college for vocal performance. And actually left college before graduating to pursue a career in a band.
Nice.
We moved to Nashville. It didn't really work out. And I kind of got sick of music and being a starving musician, and just needed a fresh start. So I moved to LA after visiting a friend. And that particular friend was working at a production company. And I just told her, I was like, I need work. I was staying on her couch. And she saw where I was financially, and she kind of got me a job as an office manager or an assistant office manager. That technically was an unpaid internship, even though I wasn't in college. But don't tell anybody because I'm pretty sure that's illegal. So I won't tell you what company it was.
Okay. Yeah. Keep on the deal. Just whisper it in my ear real quick. Just fine.
But that company, it was a very small production company. So the few people that were there, including myself, we did a lot. I PA'd, production assistant. I think the first thing I did was a music video for Fits in the Tantrums. I just basically drove a van up to Bakersfield. They got me a hotel. I slept while they did an overnight shoot, and woke up the next day and drove the band back here, and that was the job, the first PA job. So
Nice.
I was like, this is pretty freaking easy, this life as a PA. So I think I want to continue to do this, but I still had a day job because that was like a 2-day-a-week internship.
Yeah.
And, fast forward a couple of years, I kind of stopped doing production and, started thinking about it. I wanted to get out of the restaurant job that I was in. And basically, I think it was like my 33rd birthday party. I was like, somebody came up to me randomly. It's like, so what are you doing? What's up with your life? And I was just like, well, I'm panicking because I don't have any like real money coming in, and I would love like whatever job I can get. And he grabbed a mutual friend of ours that was at this party, and her name is Allie. Allie basically was like, well, I need a PA to do whatever we need on set. And I was like, oh yeah, I used to PA like a couple of years ago
Mm-hmm.
why not? She was like, okay, well, meet me at such and such place tomorrow morning. So that was it was a Little Dicky music video. A Little Dicky with, I'm pretty sure Logan Paul was there and Brendan
Oh, that's
Urie
funny.
from Panic at the Disco. And
Ooh.
essentially
What
the
year was
first half of
this?
the day, oh my gosh, this was 2016.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay. Yeah,
right after Little Dicky, I had no idea who he was, and I was just like,
yeah.
why, what is up with this name of this artist? Little Dicky is just so weird,
Yeah.
but it's
Yeah.
really cool. Since he's a great artist, I listened to
Yeah.
him on repeat after that PA experience.
Mm-hmm.
But that particular day, it was just so much fun. I
Yeah.
was running around like a chicken with my head cut off because people were asking me for things that I had no idea what they were called. Hey, Tony, can you get me a Fernie pad from the truck? I didn't act like I act like I knew what a Fernie pad was in front of the
Yeah.
person who was asking me, but then I go to like the truck PA and be like, "Yo, you got to tell me what's a Fernie pad? What's an apple box?
Yeah.
It was just like, oh, what's a stinger? I was just like all this lingo that I just had
Yeah.
not learned up to this point.
Yeah.
And then it was really, I was in charge of playback this during the takes and just
Mm-hmm.
starting and stopping, just mesmerized at Brendan Urie just singing. And I was like, this is a really cool life. Like, why not continue to do this? So
Yeah.
um, after that particular shoot, I talked to Allie, and I'm pretty sure she was coordinating. She was a production coordinator at
Mm.
that point.
Yeah.
I was like, hey, like if you ever have any more jobs come up, let me know. It's really easy for me to get off work and find somebody to take over my shift at the restaurant. I'd love
Mm-hmm.
to help you out. And that, almost the next day, she called me and she was like, hey, I've got a car commercial. Same
Yeah.
experience. We're like up in Los Angeles forest or whatever it was,
Yeah. Yeah.
way up there in the middle of nowhere. It was a tedious day because as
Yeah.
the PA, I had to walk this 2 mile trek up the roadway up the mountain where they were essentially going to have shoot the cars coming down
Yeah.
with a pursuit car. I had to
Yeah.
make sure there were no rocks on the road. So I'm literally kicking rocks off the road. It was like, all of a sudden, this is not as glamorous as I thought. So
Yeah. They told you to
uh,
go kick rocks and
just literally go kick rocks. Um, but after like one of the times of making sure there was nothing in the road, no obstructions in the road, I like
yeah.
got back in the car, which was base camp for Allie and I, and
Mm-hmm.
I just started asking her, peppering her with questions about how she got into this, how she got to where she is, like
Yeah.
what's a production coordinator do.
Mm-hmm.
And this just happened to be the time where she was transitioning out of coordinating and into production managing.
Mm.
So because
There
she
you
was
go.
looking to move up, it opened up a spot for her to call me to coordinate and train me to coordinate. So
Yeah.
um, I only technically PA'd for 2 or 3 shoots before I was a production coordinator. But again, it was
It's a
like
good
just
gig.
drawing. I was drawing on like my experience at that production company that shall not be named. All the stuff that I had learned there and
Yeah.
seen people do that just I didn't know what things were called. Like
Mm-hmm.
I was actually getting to put it into practice working with Allie, and as she kept moving up to different positions, I was a coordinator when she was a PM. When she moved up to producing, I became her PM,
Mm.
and just lived the crazy life as freelancers
That's
for as
amazing.
long as we could.
I feel like for my journey, I like bounced around a lot. So I would be with one person, then I'd be over here, kind of just taking whatever I can get because I had no job, So like I'm like picking up crumbs, from anybody. But it's interesting, like that rate of like growth is amazing, and I would always encourage people to stick with like a couple people, learn as much as
Yeah.
you can from
Yeah.
them, and then because when they inevitably move up, then they take you with them,
Yep.
So
Yep.
Yeah, I was gonna
um,
say
And
that's
yeah,
super cool that you found someone like that to do that
yeah,
because that's so rare. Like I have a couple people
mm,
that hire me a lot to do things for them, but I've never moved up like that. It's always like stayed the same because they like it the way that it is or whatever. So
mm,
yeah, and I have to say, like when I started working with Allie, it was 26. It was 2016. I had already known her. Uh, I think we met in 2011.
Mm.
Whenever
Oh, I see.
when I moved to LA, so we knew each other pretty well. We went to the same
Yeah.
church and were hanging out outside of
Got
church,
it.
which is why she ended up at my birthday party.
Mm.
But when we met, neither one of us was in production. She was, I think, nannying for someone, some actress or something.
Mm.
And I, at one point, she was the manager of a shift manager at Chick-fil-A in Hollywood, and I was working at a different restaurant. And it just so
Yeah.
happened when I was looking at that time, she had gotten into it. She was in it for probably 6 months to a year.
Mm.
So it was just the perfect timing. And I hate to be that guy, but I feel like, a lot of getting a job in this industry or getting your foot in the door it depends on who you know.
Yeah.
It sucks to hear that come out of my mouth,
Yeah.
but like it really does help a lot, and I feel like that's the case with a lot of the people that I know that are in the industry.
Mm-hmm.
Just down on their luck, or someone who just got out of school that happened to know somebody, or even like interning at a place and following up with them a year or two later after you graduate to see if there are any job openings, and if they don't have a position at their company, they can connect you with um, another company that they do business with. So
Mm.
uh,
Mm-hmm.
networking is key.
Yeah.
You said it right there. Networking.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, because and I think another thing too that I'm also now having to learn is that it's about keeping up with the people, because you've known her for 5 years and she's at your birthday party.
Yeah.
That's how you
Yeah.
got the job,
That's,
and
yep.
you never know who it is that's going to get you that next job, because it could be the person that was your barber. I mean, that has not happened for me for a while,
For me
so
either.
exactly. But like it could be that person who's like, hey, they fell into it, and then now you've got that in just because of your connections with that person and the relationship that you built with that person, that whole time. So
Yeah.
um do you feel like your experience from when you were younger helps you at your job currently now?
Actually, in every position that I've had, whether it be in film, working in a restaurant, or whatever, music, uh, there are skills and things that I've recognized that I excel in that other people don't necessarily care for. Uh, for me, it's like being very like being able to look at something and figure out how to organize it in a way that makes it easier for someone to digest, or easier to
Mm,
read, or
yeah.
easier to subsect into like other little tasks to delegate to other people.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's a strength of mine, and that's something that from like just being the way that I grew up, older brother, always being in charge of the younger brother, and
Yeah.
making sure that my parents had whatever they needed from me. Like that's what I have brought into every job that I have had,
Mm,
and I have seen. Like actually, I've been a little taken aback at how naturally it comes to me and unnaturally it doesn't come to other people.
yeah.
Because I'm able to look at like a spreadsheet and be like, oh, I love spreadsheets. And other people are like, do not make me look at another spreadsheet. I just don't want to do it. So it becomes a thing where I'm like, oh, no, I got you. Like, I'll take this and I'll just let
Yeah.
you know the information that you need to know from said spreadsheet.
Yeah.
And over time I have also kind of grown in other areas. Like I did not go to school for accounting whatsoever, and I just saw that there was a need on all the jobs, from like when I was coordinating, looking at budgets and whatnot, and understanding how they like film and music video commercial budgets work. And now I am the budget and schedule
Yeah.
guy in our
Yeah.
department.
Yeah.
I don't love it, but I'm happy to do it because I understand what's going on and uh, what's needed to create these budgets and schedules.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Those
Yeah,
types of
absolutely.
people are super valuable. So like kudos to you, Tony, because like I know a few. But relatively speaking, like there's so many people who like I feel like don't just get stuck, but you know, they don't put their best foot forward because they're like, this is my lane and I'm staying in this. But like, if there's a hole somewhere and you can fill that hole, especially in film production, like you're going to become so valuable, so valuable. So
yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the advice that I pretty much give anyone who PAs for me or on any job. There are people who are career PAs, and there's nothing wrong with being a career PA because I understand like the pros and cons to that position, and the flexibility that it offers. But you know, if you're wanting to move up in production, like figure out what it is that you want to do, and you can talk to people that are doing that, learn like how they got there. Or you might, like me, find yourself just saying yes to everything and ending up the senior vice president of a freaking doc department.
The Lot One podcast is brought to you by the Tourist Hat Coffee Company. You know what keeps me running on those long film sets, Stagey?
What's that, Chris?
Coffee. And you know what's the worst thing ever?
A swift kick in the pants.
No, bad coffee. So that's why I choose Tourist Hat Coffee Company's high quality coffee beans. Their artisan roasted single origin coffee and handcrafted blends are so much better than those stale stuff you get from those other brands.
Yeah, those things are bad.
Tourist Hat Coffee Company's coffee is artisan roasted, micro roasted, single origin, and their small batch roaster that handcrafts their blends to maximize peak freshness upon delivery. Family owned and operated. What more could you ask for from a coffee company, Deji?
I literally can't think of anything else.
If you're still not sold, a portion of each purchase goes towards contributing to some of their favorite nonprofit organizations, such as Animation Dance Community, Seeds of Hope International, and Beautiful Gate Orphanage.
These guys are good.
Make Tourist Hat Coffee Company your new go-to quality coffee choice with our exclusive offer for you, the Lot One podcast listener.
Oh, listen up, guys.
First-time customers can use the code LOT1BOGO at checkout to receive 1 free bag of coffee when you buy 2. That's right, Deji, buy 2, get 1 free.
Whoa.
So head on over to touristhatcoffeecompany.com and use promo code LOT1BOGO at checkout. Again, that is LOT1 BOGO at checkout. Whether you work in the film industry or not and want a delicious cup of coffee, this is the perfect time to stock up on your favorite blends of coffee or try something new. I know I'll be brewing Tourist Hat on my sets moving forward, Deji. Again, that's promo code LOT1 BOGO, LOT1 BOGO at checkout to claim your buy 2, get 1 free. Terms and conditions apply. Tourist Hat, coffee that fuels your adventure.
Do you feel like for the path you chose, or that chose you in a way, do you feel like there is a specific set of skills that you sort of just naturally have, and the people that are in that, you know, the lane of filmmaking, right? The producing lane. Do you feel like that these people have sort of just like general skill sets that are fairly similar to each other?
If you'd asked me this 5 years ago, I would say that yes, there is a particular skill set that all producers have. I have since grown and met other people who, you know, just excel in other areas that also carry the title producer. So being a producer can mean any number of things. It could literally mean that you are someone who gave money. A executive producer or a producer, you know, get that title sometimes, and really have no other dealings with the film other than giving that money. There are producers who are really good with like the logistics of like running a shoot or managing a team of people. And that I would say, you know, comes from being able to manage personalities, which again, 5 years ago, I would have told you the biggest part of this job is literally managing personalities and being able to crisis manage whenever things go wrong, even though your job as a producer is plan for whatever comes your way and like act like it's not a big deal, and just like fix it as the train is moving. So, I mean, yeah, that's where I'm at now. Like, I feel like I'm laughing because there are definitely producers that it's harder to work with than others who haven't quite gotten it or gotten there.
Yeah,
And then it'll come with like more experience and being able to
right.
see, like different scenarios that come up on different jobs.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I still would say managing personalities and being able to keep a cool head under pressure are
Mm.
probably the biggest things.
Okay. Yeah. Speaking about all of the different types of producers for you and your team, like what's sort of the structure of that team? Like who are the different players in order to make the documentaries happen from the production standpoint?
So, just to give a little more backstory about
Yeah.
this particular team that I'm a part of, the Kennedy Marshall Company has been around for a while, and the docs
Hmm.
department has been going pretty strong for a number of years, like over a decade. But around 2022, 2021, there was a shift. This is when Ali took over as president to
Mm-hmm.
oversee the whole department. So that's how I came into the picture over at Kennedy Marshall.
Yeah.
She hired me to essentially manage productions, shoots, and whatnot because she trusts the way that I ran shoots because she trained me. So
Yeah.
um, Alex is, like I said, the head of development, and she does a great job of basically fielding a lot of the emails that come in with pitch ideas or putting together packages to take out to try to get projects sold or off the ground or distributed. And Ellie is the coordinator. I hate calling people assistants, except for PA. Like even PAs, I don't call them assistants; they're PAs.
Mm.
But just giving people dignity and saying like you're a coordinator and giving them a little more responsibility. So Ellie is
Yeah.
the coordinator of the docs department, and she kind of like myself and Ali is across all of the projects. And then to round out the team, we have Adam Borzan, who is our head of post. We have a slate of maybe 20 to 30 projects, most of which are in development. It is quite a lot. And I was overwhelmed when I first started, and I was just like, how do you go from managing one project at a time to now managing 20, 30 projects and keeping all the legal, like where we're at and all.
Yeah.
Again,
Yeah.
I had to lean on spreadsheets. I put everything in the spreadsheet to help me organize it. With Kennedy Marshall, our docs department, we do projects with other production companies.
Mm.
Co-pros is what we call them.
Hmm.
We have strictly in-house projects, stuff that is just Kennedy people of Kennedy Marshall. Our team is working on it. We may hire freelancers to
Yeah.
help manage. Then we have things that kind of come to us at any given stage of production. For any number of reasons and needing some sort of help from our company and our
Mm.
size and prestige to either get a project sold or get production going and take on the legal responsibilities of a production. Um, so Ali, myself, and Ellie, as I said, are across all of those projects. Whereas Alex, being the head of development, is basically developing projects from scratch,
Mm.
typically for us to be the lead production team on. But sometimes some of those end up being co-pros because other company or the people are coming to us um, wanting our help putting things into production or, like I said, getting them sold. So um, there are things that Alex is not on. There are things that Adam is not on because another production company is taking the lead or being production services on a
Mm.
particular project.
Wow, that that's a lot.
That's good. I mean,
That's
it's great.
crazy. No, yeah, that's 23 is so much. I just want to go back to that really quick. That is insane for what? There's 4 of you if you don't include the top, or is there 5?
There's 5 people total
Yeah.
with Ali.
Wow.
Frank Marshall is the
Mm.
head of the company.
Hmm.
Yeah.
But yeah, there are 5 people in the docs team, and so it's a small team. But
Yeah.
I am also learning a lot of doc companies are kind of this size or
Yeah.
smaller.
Yeah.
People have
Wow.
been on Zooms with us and been like, your team is so big, and we're looking, we're just like, there's just 5 of us.
You can't even bring the other hand up. You have to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Y'all are a well-oiled machine, and I don't
getting
know.
there. We're getting there.
Okay, you're a pretty good oil machine. Maybe you need a little
have
bit of a
kinks,
synthetic in here and
yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Kick the rocks out. You posed this question before, but I'm going to pose it right back. Like, how do you go from managing one project at a time to then managing 23?
I'm pulling from all those other production companies that I freelanced for as a PM or a coordinator back in music video and commercial days. Taught me a lot about how to run a company or a department in a company, more specifically. And big shout out to Whitehorse. I did my first documentary project. I did maybe 3 projects with doc projects with Whitehorse. And I learned a lot from just having conversations with Nick Farrell, who was who is now the president of the company. Just watching him, I have questions about specific tasks that I had, and in the answers, I was learning a lot more about higher level functions within the department. That after 3 projects with him, like I felt he was giving me a lot more. He saw that I wanted to move up, and even offered me a position on staff there before I chose ultimately to come over to Kennedy Marshall, where I was just like, I just see an opportunity for me to start fresh, essentially a fresh slate at Kennedy Marshall, and building the docs department with Allie here, because Allie also freelanced with Whitehorse and knows Nick Farrell as well. So we call him pretty frequently, not just because we have projects still with them, we do, but just we have questions about, like, we're dealing with the DGA stuff. The DGA just called about X, Y, and Z, and like we've never heard of this issue, and he's like, I've never had that issue either, but like let's talk through, let's work through whatever the issue is. So it's good to have people, whether official or unofficial, technically mentors, to be able to rely on or call up whenever you get to a place where you're like, this is a little above where I'm at right now. I'm willing to learn, but I need somebody to teach me or talk me through this. Whether that, and it could be, for anybody, it could be someone internally within the company you're working for. But for me, it just happens, me and Allie, it happens to be, well, I guess technically it's internal too. We talked to Frank, we talked to Nick, we talked to a lot of other people that we worked with in the past who we trust.
I want to dig into that a little bit. Like, I think there's going to be a lot of listeners who find it really, like, I mean, it's an obvious thing in my mind. It's obvious, at least, that like you have not the ability, but maybe not humility. I forget the word I'm looking for, but to go to people who technically, in a lot of ways, are higher than you, and just be like, I need help, even though you're like vice president of this huge like even people at the top are still like confused and need help from other people or other peers and stuff like that. Is that something that like you've had to learn over time to just have the being humble to be able to like have the guts to go and do that? Or is that something like that's easy, like I trust them, I have friends?
I am not someone who like ego trips. I am like, look, this title is just that to me. It's a title. At the end of the day, I have a job that needs to get done, and if I don't do it, I feel like I'm in danger of losing my job. So in order to keep my job and this paycheck, I need to go find answers to the questions that I don't know the answers to, instead of just guessing at stuff. And there are times where I do kind of logistically logically arrive at an answer, and it works out without having to, feel for outside counsel or advice from somebody else. But there's no shame here. I will call whoever I need to call or email whoever I need to email to get like, and not a lot of times, not just one opinion, but multiple opinions from multiple sources,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and figure out, their advice was based on the situation that they were in. Mine, I need to pick and choose from the plethora of people that I've gone out to, and figure out what works best for the scenario that I am trying to solve.
That's great, because I feel like a lot of people get becoming, because being a leader at lot one, like even on our sets, sometimes people are afraid to come up and ask me, and I really try to break that down, but I also understand why, because it's just my personality and who I am, why it can seem intimidating, but I always try to leave it open of like, come and ask me, because I don't care. I just want to see you do a better job. Even in my like day job, like I want people to come to me so I can give them this advice, and then even me, like I don't know everything. I'll admit when I'm wrong, and I'll go and figure out how to do it right, or what have you. So like I feel like a lot of people struggle with that, and that's what prevents them from being able to progress or, you know, evolve from their current roles, and that's probably how they get stuck a lot of times, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I will say I wasn't always like this, because when I was doing that internship at unnamed production company, I didn't know anything about production.
Sure.
All I knew was like I knew who the owners of the company were. I knew they were always busy, but I didn't go to them
Right.
for advice about like managing the office or PA stuff. There were people below them, namely this girl who helped get me the job. I would go to her all the time, and ask her, "Oh, like why haven't I been paid?" She was like, "Oh, well, you need to send me an invoice." I didn't know I needed to send you an invoice back when you could invoice for freelance work. Uh, so it just, you need to figure out who you can be, not necessarily buddy buddy with, but like who you can approach, to get the answers to your problem.
Yeah.
It's not always going to be the head of a company. For me, at this stage in my career, it just so happens that I'm going to the president of another company. But when I met him, he wasn't the president of the
Right.
company.
Of course. Yeah. Yeah.
So
I mean, you never know if you go to someone higher up or whatever, like you just by you going and asking them may put you on their radar. Like that's a lot of things people don't like when you're in a higher up position and you're dealing with, you know, hundreds of people or tens of people, whatever, like it's easy to not forget, but like you're just dealing with a lot of people. So if someone doesn't speak up or talk to you, you know, a week from then, you're probably going to forget about them. So if you come up and
yeah,
you express interest, who knows, that may be just a door you opened up completely.
this is literally happening. This is playing out right now. So we have interns in the docs department, and there are some semesters where I'm working with these interns indirectly. Like Ellie is essentially managing, the coordinator is managing the interns, and I let Ellie know like what I need help with or what the tasks are to assign to the interns. But it always ends up being the interns who come and start asking me questions, who are not afraid to ask me questions that I end up remembering later on down the line. Or like, the ones that sometimes I'll like send an invite, hey, we're going out to eat after work. Would you guys like to come? And they'll come, and it opens up like the doors for more personal interactions that have more lasting impressions on me. Uh, so that like right actually today, one of our interns from this last semester, he was like, hey, I'm going back home to New York. If you guys need help on X project that having to be shooting this week, let me know. So I called him up and I was like, hey, like I would love to, um, thank you for reaching out. I would love to like help you get an extra $250 a day
Yeah.
to PA on this shoot that like I can't be in New York right now. But I trust you because we've talked. I know where you're at, and I know that you can handle the task at hand.
Greetings, film enthusiasts. It's Christopher from the Lot One podcast. Ready for an exclusive pass to our cinematic world? Join our Patreon page for early access, behind the scenes content, and a community of fellow film pros and enthusiasts. Your support keeps the reels turning. Head to patreon.com/the Lot One podcast and let's make movie magic together. Thanks for being a part of the Lot One podcast family.
Question I have for you is, how do you determine what like network or streaming platform you want to use to choose when you're trying to pitch like a doc or an idea?
Again, I was not great at the development thing.
Yeah, that's right. You told me that.
But we since have learned a lot since Alex has come in and kind of shown Ali and I a lot of the techniques and the thought behind some of the decisions that get made. And I will say, for me personally, when someone is pitching an idea or I get a deck or a sizzle that essentially lays out the look and feel of the project, the story in the deck is probably going to be completely different by the end of the doc, because you get into interviewing people and you find new things and you find that there's a more interesting story or whatever, and then you end up, the whole project shifts. All this to say, when I hear about a project and the potential for a said project, I think about the main distributors, because it's always, you always want your number one, you want your stuff to be seen. HBO, Discovery, that whole Warner block of distribution, Netflix, Hulu, Disney, the demographic that each of those platforms reaches, and what audience is the right audience for said project is number one for me. Also, the level of quality for said doc. Is this something that we're going to need a lot of money for? If it is, I'm going to try to go to someone like a Netflix or a HBO who has potentially has a lot of money to throw at a doc, as opposed to like a MGM Plus or a Stars, who, they have great stuff on their platforms, but, their budgets are not as hefty as, those other streamers, top tier streamers. Not that they're not top tier, but those are the main factors. On top of that, what are they looking for? Because we have relationships at a lot of these companies, and we're having conversations kind of constantly, and they are telling us what their mandates are for projects, what they're looking for. If they're not in a place to buy at this point, at any given time, or when they are looking for something to fill like a programming gap, there are a lot of different factors that go into where something gets housed, and least of which is existing relationships between the heads of the company and the head of our company. Like, literally, Frank might have dinner with Bob Iger, and the next thing we know, we have a project with Disney without having to really go through the whole development process again. Right.
Yeah.
It's just an idea. They'll sit at dinner and like say, oh, we should do a Beach Boys doc. And Frank comes and says, hey, we're doing Beach Boys for Disney. And we're like, okay, great. I guess, where do we start? Where do we start? And how much money are they willing to give us? So there's a lot of that also happens. But, then there's the independent route of going to a festival, getting into a festival, and trying to sell it at like a Sundance Film Festival. So it's just whoever's willing to pay for it.
Right. Nice. What makes a particular project good for like a Sundance, right? Like, or for Disney?
I have to look at the audience. Disney's audience is a tamer. This is a very crude way of putting this, but I feel like there is a younger, more wholesome quality of content for Disney, and the stuff that doesn't fit into that could still go to Disney via Hulu or some other tile on Disney.
Yeah, right. That has a different flavor,
right? Which also kind of does help this breakdown of like what is the best fit for it. So like National Geographic, NatGeo, we had a film that basically was sold to NatGeo that, you know, I was like, it just makes sense. It was a documentary about space exploration
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
you know, NatGeo, I mean, I can't think of anything else other than like the Discovery Channel,
Discovery, yeah.
Yeah.
which would be Max at this point.
Yeah.
But you know, NatGeo we pitched it. I think they pitched it to NatGeo and they bought it before they got a chance to take it to Discovery. So
Yeah.
you're really looking at the audience initially.
You in your past have done a lot of like music videos, and you yourself were a singer. Does that have any influence in the types of projects that are going through the docs now at Kennedy Marshall?
That's what influenced my decision to come to. It's one of the factors that influenced my decision to come over to Kennedy Marshall. I had worked on a Bee Gees documentary with Frank and Allie at Whitehorse, who was also focusing on music centered documentaries.
Hmm.
It just, I just fell into working for these companies that happen to be doing music docs. I think having a background in music, I have found that my experience as a musician and a band member, I am able to offer some insight into the makeup of a band, like behind the scenes, behind the glossy veneer of some of the bands that we kind of interact with. Like there was one time we wanted to dissect uh, one of the songs of one of the groups that we were discussing. And I literally had to explain why this song, mechanically, why it works and why it's so different from everything else we're hearing, and break down, oh, it like modulates X, Y, and Z number of times. And that's very unusual. But also like it takes someone with a keen ear to not only be able to write and play this, but to also sing this. You're modulating 3 or 4 times in a verse. Like it just, that's crazy. It's unheard of. But then also getting into how harmonies work and blending and why it's so like certain sounds from different bands, like what they're doing and how that's like affecting you aurally,
Okay.
what's going on in your head and your ears. So I geek out. Clearly, I geek out. I'm not gonna bore you with a lot of the music jargon, but I definitely find that I enjoy working on music docs more than a lot of other types of docs. But again, like I love listening to true crime.
Oh yeah.
I love like figuring out what makes humans tick, which, you know, being a documentarian, like you get to ask those questions and get those answers and tell those stories.
Yeah. How is like a documentary idea developed?
Okay.
Should we pitch you something right now and you can explain what would happen next after you said yes?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay. This is actually no one steal this idea.
This is
an idea. I'm gonna pitch.
This is a real thing. I didn't know this was happening.
No,
Okay.
no. Yeah, okay. I was literally just thinking about this. This came while you were talking. I was like, oh, this would be a cool doc. 2 ideas. 1, I always do this, DJ. I always like 1 idea, and then I go 2. 1
Okay.
is a doc on zillennials. Do you know what a zillennial is?
Me.
Yeah, it's the people who land in the middle, because I feel like I can relate to millennials as much as I can relate to Gen Z. So I find myself as and what is that like in the current generation? Or 2, we'd call it raised by boomers. And because, you know, there's a lot involving, you know, boomerism and stuff like that. And my dad's a boomer, and how does that affect who I am as a person compared to like Gen Z, who's raised by millennials and Gen X?
The first question I would ask myself is, how valuable is this in the distribution market right now? Is this something that I feel the execs that we would be pitching this to try to get it sold, that they would be able to relate to? How much explanation would we have to or like put together, like package wise,
Just to explain it to the exec?
the deck and the sizzle to explain the topic and why it's so what's interesting about it? Um, then if we were to find someone or identify uh, potential home or viability of this, I would go into, you know, making the materials, the like, let's sit down and talk out like what the story beats are for said doc, the things we want to explore, the questions we want to ask, the type of people that we want to interview, the characters that we want to have in the project to sell the project. So that would be your deck and your sizzle. And then I would put together a schedule and a budget for said project. Say we're going to, you know, for a project like this, it probably wouldn't be a heavy archival doc, uh, but we probably would still ask, you know, our interviewees for archival like photos and home videos and whatnot to help fill like some of the interstitial moments within the doc to kind of flesh it all out. How many interviews are we going to shoot? Uh, how how long do we want it to be? Is it going to be a series? Is it better as a series? Is it better as a feature? For something like this, I think that it would probably be best as that's off the top of my head, this given moment. I would say let's shoot for a feature because it is probably going to be harder to sell as a series, and it'd be cheaper as a feature. And I would say probably wouldn't want to exceed 3 million, and 3 million's the top end given what the market can handle for something like this. So, you know, let's bring that down to 1.5 to $2 million and go from there.
Man, I feel like I was just in the room right there.
What
I wish
you
I had
bring up-
another idea.
I know. I was like, you brought up this has come up a couple of times in my mind while you're talking. I feel like most people understand on some level where money, like when you make a movie and you sell a movie, where the money comes from, right? It goes to theaters, ticket sales, merchandise, like all that stuff. Like it's super complicated and there's more to it. But how does a doc make money off of like a streamer?
um, you know, that's a very good question. It really the in an ideal doc scenario, you would make the doc for as cheap as, I mean, with any film, you make it for as little as possible, and you sell it for more than what you for in the doc world. You sell it for more than what you made it.
Sure.
It costs to make it.
Sure.
So, and I can't give numbers, but I know that we, you know, one of our music docs we made, it cost maybe $5 million when all was said and done, for like development, production, and the post, not counting marketing from whoever you're selling it to is going to put into it. But those three things, it came to about $5 million. And we sold the doc for, I want to say, $9 or $10 million. So there was there's obviously a profit. This happened to be a documentary that what we call a legacy doc, for a prestige level legacy doc. It was about a band who had been around for years, that just had a story that appealed to people who were 80, people who were 8. And the distributor recognized the viability, or like this would get more eyeballs on their platform, and people would not just turn this off hopefully after like the first 10 minutes, but they would sit with it for the entire thing. So they came up with a number and said, okay, we're willing to pay you $9 to $10 million for it. So but that's not the case for a lot of documentaries nowadays, especially now. The golden age of docs, I think, has come and gone. And we're now I am dealing with, you know, distributors saying, $3 million, $4 million is a little too much for a doc. How about if it's a series, we do $1 million an episode? And just they're just not willing to pay a whole lot of money for it. So hopefully they pay you a little more than what it costs to make it, but sometimes that's just not viable. And the other way of making money, say like, you know, the company just fronted all the money to make the doc. is licensing the project to a platform for like some term limited term.
Mhm.
Um, so I think I was on a call yesterday, and someone just like verified that one of our docs was licensed for a 7-year term.
Okay.
So after that 7 years, we made our money. We made the money we made off of that one distributor. Then we have to try to shop it around to someone else to see if they want to pick it up.
Mhm.
Or, there are other avenues of revenue outside of just like going to those streamers. Other distributors that I didn't even think about were like airlines. Like people
Oh
Mm.
yeah.
sit on planes all the time and watch movies, and that is a market. It's not a very lucrative market, but it's an additional revenue stream
Yeah.
for a lot of our projects.
Hey, Deji here from the Lot 1 podcast. Exciting news. You can now join our Patreon family. Get early access, exclusive content, and connect with fellow film industry peeps. Your support keeps the magic alive. So head on over to patreon.com/the Lot 1 podcast. Thanks for being a part of our journey. When you make a doc and you sell it, let's say for that, that the 5 to the 9, right? Example, that they're just, you haven't sold it to them. You haven't sold the rights to them, right? Or in that scenario, did you sell the rights and you, like, I guess that's something a bit of a question about.
That particular project was what we call a negative pickup. And I'll try to explain this the best way I can because I am still learning a lot about like what all that entails. But
Mm-hmm.
essentially, the production company, the producers, we had all the creative control over the majority of control over making the project, how the money was spent. We essentially paid, I didn't, but other producers paid to have this particular project made. The distributor was not paying to have it made, they paid to essentially license it for that
Mm.
7-year period. Although when they acquired it sometime in the middle of making the project. At that point in time, we started saying this is a project for Max,
Mm.
uh, but in essence, it was our project that they're licensing. So when that
Got
license
it.
is up, the rights. I think the rights, and it depends on how the deal is negotiated
Right.
and laid out at the beginning. But I believe on that particular project, the rights revert back to the two companies who put in the money to make it.
Got it.
There are also acquisitions, and
Yeah.
then there are projects that are commissioned.
Got it.
Mm.
Commission projects are projects that the studio is generally like a part of at the very beginning and are putting forth the money and are the driving force behind, like, I mean, technically the producers are still driving everything, but uh, we have to run everything through them. So here's the story. The directors laid out what this is going to look like. Or if we pivot, like I said, docs often do in the middle of the project, they pivot. We have to let the studio know, hey, look, this is now the story. You guys still on board with this? Because I mean, if you're not, tell us now because this is the story is a story.
Mm. Mm.
So those are commission projects, and acquisitions are typically the project is done and they're being licensed like outright with no money, no real say. They're just saying, hey, we need more content on our platform. Um, and we're willing to pay X amount of dollars for it.
Do you mind letting us know a little bit more about the upcoming projects for Kennedy Marshall? The Beach Boys, the Bee Gees, Space Race, which I saw the trailer too, looks really good.
Bee Gees is just one that's like very close to my heart because that was like the first real doc that like I was able to take ownership over what I did on that doc. I
Yeah.
didn't come in the middle. And it still, when we talk to other documentary filmmakers, especially ones who do music docs, that tends to be the documentary that comes up in conversation. Oh, we love that. We love how you guys like changed the approach and you told the story really well, a story that a lot of people didn't know. We were
Mm.
able to dig and flesh out things that like I was learning. I only coming into that knew that the Bee Gees were this like I don't want to say corny, but like they were just like they were a disco band, and I just was not
Yeah.
a disco kid with white suits and like falsetto voices.
Yeah.
But I grew to have an appreciation for them and their songwriting and their like just musicianship through that, and the way that Frank handled that story appealed to people who love music and people who don't love music.
Oh, that's true.
But that project came out in 2020 during like the pandemic. But more recently, we released Space Race March of this year, which is the story of the first Black astronauts. And it mostly focuses on the the first African American astronauts, not just people who are Black. And there's some nuance there. And again, this is one of those projects that it started out as a completely different story. It started out as a story of the race between the United States and Russia to have the first person of African descent go into space. But when we started interviewing some of our African American astronauts, they were like, we didn't even know about like this guy Arnaldo until like many years later. Like, also, where did Russia get a Black guy from? There are no Black people in Russia. So needless to say, we pivoted that whole conversation and realized, or the whole project, and realized that there was like a similar story within NASA and the African American community, while still being able to pay homage to Arnaldo Tamayo as the first person of African descent to go into space for Russia. And then lastly, the Beach Boys. I knew who the Beach Boys were. I didn't really grow up listening to them. It just was not played on the radio stations that I was listening to growing up. But again, this is another project where it really is it's a fascinating story. It's a complicated story to tell. And there's a lot more to the story than what we were able to cram into, the runtime for the project. But I think for people like myself who didn't really know a lot about them, you're able to sit down and hear good music, and hear a great story, an interesting story that touches on a lot of areas in popular culture and within the United States, particularly California.
I have more questions, but don't know if we have the time for them. So I'm gonna turn over to Chris. He's got a very special question, very burning.
Always hype it up.
Burning question.
Alrighty. If you had one piece of advice, something quick, easy sentence to tell our listeners, someone who wants to be in docs, producing docs, whatever it is, doc related, what would be that one piece of advice?
I mean, just stay grinding, continue to grind. It is a grind. But don't be afraid to like ask questions. Find someone on set that you can kind of buddy up with, or someone to come up under, and like just life's too short to work for people that you just don't enjoy working with. That's the piece of advice. Life's too short to be stuck on a team of people that you're just not gelling with, because you don't want to be stuck with that team. You don't want to be stuck in that position. So, this is a big town. I know people say it's a small town, but like there are plenty of opportunities here. There are plenty of opportunities elsewhere to still do production. Figure out what's right for you, and stick with it, pursue it, grind at it.
Wow. Yeah.
There it is.
That's great. So we do have some listener mail. Which one is more in demand, a docuseries or a feature?
I think it is. It's a story. Do you have enough story that it makes sense for you to stretch this out over a period of like 4 or 5 episodes, or not? And what is the distributor willing to pay for it?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's something that we don't really ever think about when you're thinking creatively. You're not thinking about that end product and that end, like, okay, well, where's this going to live? But that is on the mind of a person who's paying for it all the time.
Yep.
Is this going to make me money? So, I mean, if I was paying for something, I would be asking those questions too,
Absolutely.
So thank you so much, Tony, for coming on the show today. I mean,
you, Tony.
So much. I'm glad there's an after show because I got more questions and we're going to get into it in there. So if you're not, a part of the after show, you make sure you get on that. But thank you so much for coming on today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was actually a lot of fun. I was like, is this going to go well? Like, I'm just talking about work, which sounds so boring to me. But,
no.
You guys made it sound a lot more fun than it actually is.
You're a lot
day-to-day.
cooler than you think you are, Tony, okay?
Yeah. Before you go, where can people find you?
Yes.
I have an Instagram.
Okay.
I don't remember what my Instagram tag is. I think it's like Tone Roro, TONERORO. I say this because I have a secret Instagram account, and I can never remember which one is which.
Oh, I see. Got it. Yeah. So you might have just given out the secret one. Okay, but let's go with Tone Roro for now. Thank you so much again.
Yes.
And I'm looking forward to the after show.
Well, thanks for having me, guys. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Bye.
And that's a wrap on today's podcast. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed the episode, subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And leave a review and share it with your friends, family, your dog, everyone. It helps others find us and lets us grow the podcast. If you're not a part of our exclusive Patreon community yet, head to patreon.com/thelot1podcast. That is patreon.com/the lot, LOT, #1 podcast for early access, bonus content like the after show, and more. Also, I want to give a quick shout out to our incredible Patreon supporters. Your backing keeps the Lot 1 podcast lights on. No pun intended. Connect with us on Instagram and TikTok at the Lot 1 podcast. Again, that's the LOT1, the #1 podcast, for behind the scenes content and updates. We're now accepting listener mail. Got questions for us and our guests? Drop us a line. Also, if you're interested in finding out more about Lot 1 Productions and all we have going on, check us out at lot1productions.com. Last time, that's LOT, the #1 productions.com.
Special thanks to Tourist Hat Coffee Company for sponsoring this week's episode. Head on over to touristhatcoffeecompany.com to redeem your exclusive buy 2 get 1 free deal with the promo code LOT1BOGO. That's LOT, the #1, BOGO at checkout. Terms and conditions may apply. Again, that's LOT1BOGO at checkout.
Until next time, keep those creative fires burning. Dream big, and remember, the filmmaking journey is a ride worth taking. See you next week.